Broadcasting live from the Cabaretti Courtyard on the plain of New Capenna, this is Tap Tap Concede. Welcome everybody to Tap Tap Concede. My name is Graham, and joining me this time, we have guests. We've got Marshall Sutcliffe.
Hey everybody.
And Kenji Numat the Nummy Egashira.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Kenji's not used to being on camera, so
yeah, it is really totally alien to him.
We're very uncomfortable here, you know.
Yes.
I love that before we started recording, you both sat down and said the things that you say when you start one of your pieces of content.
Yeah, we did. It's natural. Like there's a microphone and a camera, and I'm just like, "What is up, everybody?" And off we go. You know.
Yeah. Kenji and Marshall are in town for the Streets of New Capenna pre-release, which by the time this airs will have happened, but I don't know if the replay is up on the channel. It's you know, we've been making a lot of content for the past couple days, and at some point it all blurs together. And what else is blurred together is the last several years. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're also going to talk a little bit about the new sort of pro play announcements. Want to get some different perspectives on that. But before we do, a reminder that the show is brought to you by Card Kingdom. Check out cardkingdom.com/LRR. That lets them know that we sent you, and we do that because we think they're great, and we really enjoy continuing to work with Card Kingdom because they've got excellent customer service and preposterously fast shipping. And if you tell them Loading Ready Run sent me, button please, you can write that in the little comments post. They'll give you a little button where it says a funny magic thing. Currently, I believe we're still on Math is for Blockers. And of course, this show and everything we do is brought to you by you and your kind support of our Patreon at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. Pardon me. So James had suggested that it would be interesting to I don't know why I mentioned. I say that because if this is a bad idea, it's James's fault.
Yeah.
I don't know why I was like,
I like
this was James's idea. I like to give credit. That it'd be interesting to maybe talk about sort of, you know, how you both independently have, kept in touch with Magic over the past couple years of this still ongoing pandemic, when it's like you can't go to the store and do, you know, or there's no Magic Fests, there's no PTQs or any of that, you know. How have you sort of remained connected to the game, if at all?
Who should start?
Take your
Go
pick.
ahead, Marshall.
Go for
Me?
it. Yeah.
Sure, why not?
Me, little old me.
Marshall.
It's been tough.
Yeah.
Have felt more disconnected than ever from the game, for sure, from the community and the game. Kind of interesting because I think, you know, a lot of what I enjoy about the game is the game itself, meaning that online suits me just fine. I've always played a lot of Magic online. I know Kenji has too. It's actually my preferred way to play. And the reason for that is because it's so efficient. I can do 2 or 3 drafts in the same time that it takes to do like one real life draft without all of the overhead of like getting people in a room and all that stuff.
Right.
So I've always leaned in the online direction anyway when it comes to like how I play. I've always been aware of how important having the community and the friends and the sitting across from somebody is, but this definitely was too far in the online direction for me. I feel disconnected from it, I haven't drafted in 2 years, like at a table,
Like physically drafted.
I have not like cracked a booster pack and been like, okay, which card do I want? It's only been online. Now I've been drafting a lot. I mean, for me, not like, you know, the machine over here, but still, you know, a good amount, you know, over 100 drafts probably of each format. But I'll tell you, I got into a rhythm over the years, particularly because of coverage.
Right.
And so every other weekend I would be gone, and I kind of had a social circle and all the things that a social circle entails. I had my really close people, coverage team, that kind of thing.
Right.
Extending circles out to the people that I talk to the most, even the people I don't like, right? And people I don't know. And that was something that I took for granted, I think, on some level. And then when the pandemic hit and that all got cut away, I was kind of at home and I'm going like, wow, like I don't have any of those things when that travel every other weekend is cut away.
It's wild to remember now that, yeah, you were covering events literally every other week.
Yes.
There was a GP at a Magic Fest
Totally.
all the time.
20 plus weekends a year I was gone.
Yeah.
And so I've had to do some recalibrating for myself to make sure that I'm kind of taking care of more socialized stuff at home so that I don't have to, because I can't be on the road for the rest of my life.
Right.
Right. And so I've had to kind of say, okay, look, that's an important part of your life, but you need to cultivate what you've got at home. And so I've been working on doing that. I joined a watch club because that's kind of my other hobby. I play basketball. And so there's a group of guys that I play basketball with, that kind of stuff, to just sort of have those routines that involve groups of other people that aren't Magic related at home. But I'll tell you, with stuff starting to cool off, pandemic wise, coming up here, fantastic. Like seeing you, seeing Paul, seeing Kenji. I mean, Kenji and I had lunch a couple of weeks ago, but I hadn't seen him, since the pandemic otherwise. And it's like, it's weird because I thought, well, I'll be really happy. I'm not. I'm relieved. I'm just like, oh, thank God Graham's still a human being out in the world somewhere, right?
I am extant.
Yeah. And Kenji's doing really good. And like I got kind of, we got to get caught up the other week, and it was just like, this is still here, right? And so now I'm kind of thinking like, I want to come back and meet the community and meet the people that I really care about where I did before, but kind of have my cake and eat it too with the other stuff at home.
Yeah. Yeah, that
very eye-opening.
Yeah, I mean, not just for Magic events, because I didn't do a lot of Magic event traveling, because couldn't really validate that. Certainly not with a particularly young kid at the time.
Yeah,
but we would always go to PAX.
Yeah,
which at the time had more. They've since canceled PAX South, but it used to be West in Seattle, and then Unplugged in Philadelphia, which I still haven't actually gone to, and then South in San Antonio, and West in Boston, and there was just this cycle. And also, much love to PAX Australia. I will return someday. But I had the same sort of thing. There were our friends who I consider very good friends. They're incredibly good friends of mine, who I only ever see at PAX.
Yes.
And only ever see in the sort of the like, hey, how's it going? Oh, I'm exhausted. Oh, so am I. All right, cool. See you in 6 months. Like, but still very good friends. And then, just woof, gone. Right? None of that anymore. And so it's like, oh, yeah. But when it's like every other week, that's even so much more frequent.
Yeah, you get used to this cycle. Where you just are around people, even if you didn't plan it, right? A lot of the people that maybe aren't in my inner circle, but like one or two removed, think of like a lot of Magic pros who I'm friends with, but not like, I don't talk to them online really or whatever. And I'm like, oh, hey, how's it going, man? What have you been up to? And you just get caught up. Cool. Good luck in the tournament. Good seeing you. And the next week, hey, there you are again. And maybe they come out to dinner that time. And that's that incidental socializing, that matters too. Yeah.
For you especially, it seemed like, because you're traveling so much, like to go cold turkey all of a sudden, that's...
It was really interesting mentally.
Right.
Because on one hand, I was scared because I was like, oh my God, like half my career just sort of fell away. But on the other hand, I remember feeling like, so I don't have to gear up for another trip and get on an airplane. And I was like, I could probably use a break.
Right.
And now that things are starting to ramp up, I'm trying to recalibrate and really put some effort into thinking about how much travel do I really want to do, right? Like, because I know I don't want to go back to the 22 weekends thing. That time in my life is going to be over. But, that doesn't mean zero's the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it was a little bit different. I'm kind of more introverted, I would say. So the pandemic was almost like, okay, now I can totally focus, on my one thing, and just grind away. And I think that's for like a streamer, that's okay because you get to cultivate your community. More and more people are at home doing their own thing, so you get to introduce a bunch of new people, a bunch of new personalities. And while it's not necessarily real interaction, you're not face to face with those people, you're still having conversations, you're still getting to expand and explore. But man, there was definitely a sense of relief. Like, this is the first big travel I've done in a long time as well, and it's just like, oh, okay, this is what it's like again to kind of do something,
Yes.
It's crazy.
I had that same feeling.
Yeah, no, it's like just a stark contrast.
I know that
between,
oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
I know that when sort of lockdown first started, it was different for us, obviously, for Loading Ready Run, because like we have this office studio space, and there's like 14 employees at either full or part time, and there's always people coming in and out. But a lot of our friends from outside are solo streamers, right? And so definitely it was like, okay, so I have to not go outside and see anybody and stay inside and stream all day. This is no change.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
So
yeah, no, it was almost better for streamers because more people are at home, and so your audience goes up.
There was a viewership spike in April.
Yeah, absolutely.
April 2020, there was a big viewership spike, like a noticeable uptick in viewership.
Yeah,
Did you notice that too?
Yep, absolutely. Uh-huh.
Interesting.
And it's normally with Magic especially, you get a new set every 3 months or whatever, and so the new set and you peak, and then after a little while you go down, and then new set, and then
That's how the podcast is too.
yeah, but with the pandemic, more people at home, it was just like all of a sudden, and eventually it flattened out or whatever. But I don't know, it was almost a boon because I was almost getting tired of traveling too much for all the Magic events. Don't get me wrong, I loved it, but I could never do a GP every other week or something. I could never grind it out like that. I'd always want to chase the dream or whatever, but it wasn't like I need to be going to these things. So.
Yeah, you were a streamer first.
Right, exactly. Content creator first, and then anything else secondary.
It's interesting because I've known Kenji for a really long time, and the setup that we just described really suits him actually. Like because this guy works really hard.
Oh my
right?
God, yes.
Like and so. And he has the ability, this is how he got good at Magic, right? And like I'd hate to see it if you ever got into like WoW or some game that just sucks up time. Have you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He's been playing Pokemon all week.
Yeah, there you go. Just the things that reward like head down hard work grind, and I mean it feels like you were able to do that during the pandemic and really kind of focus yourself on that.
Yeah. I feel like a One Punch Man in that regard. I wasn't. There was no innate ability. It's just me putting my head to the grindstone, like you said, and just.
Yeah, but you're also really smart.
Okay, yeah, sure,
and extremely
right.
good looking and
thank
very
you.
talented and a really good dancer.
I didn't want to say anything.
Not a bad kisser.
He brought it up first.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've been like, especially recently, you've been like you start streaming at like 7 a.m.
Yeah, 7:30ish every day.
And then you do a full day's worth of streaming, and then you turn the stream off, and then you record a YouTube video. And
yeah, that's more of a recent thing. YouTube video a day now, every day since November or something. So no, it's been good. YouTube's also been a huge boon. I think it's crazy the growth there. I think the YouTube community, there's a bunch of overlap with Twitch and whatnot for streaming, but it's there is a brand new audience, of course, and so if you're trying to build up a viewer base or whatever, it's a good route to expand your opportunities.
And in terms of like paper Magic, just because I guess this is more of a diversion, but because obviously you're here for the pre-release, but you're going to an actual paper pre-release for the first time in ages.
Oh my, yeah. So, and I think this is a good thing by Wizards that they've flopped around the order of when a set is released online versus paper.
Or I think they said it's just for this one. We had a whole episode of the podcast where we talked about what Wizards called the release cadence, which is a phrase that we now love to repeat. They're like testing it for New Capenna, and we were talking about how much we enjoyed it. And some people did. Some people agreed. Some people disagreed. Everyone's got different opinions. But you were saying that you quite like this.
Yeah, no, it's good because I don't remember the last time I went to a paper pre-release. It's 5-10 years or something. I'm not even being sarcastic at that. Like
a World of Collections might have been.
No joke. It might have been that long, and because there's no point for me to go to a paper pre-release if it's released online and I can just make content with it. I can stream it. I can make videos or whatever. It's just make it, and I can put the numbers in there as well. Like you were mentioning earlier, if you sit down for a paper draft, well, you got to get all the players or whatever. Each round goes to X amount of time, and then blah blah blah, and maybe 5 hours in you've played 4 rounds. 5 hours on Magic Online or Magic Arena, you know how many games I can play? Like, I will know the set already by the time I'm done with the first day. So so this is good because it's great for actual community building and slowly rolling people back into getting paper Magic back into the ecosystem. So yeah, I'll be going to actually Card Kingdom's Mox Boarding House in Bellevue. So if people go over there, I'll be playing Streets of New Capenna for the first time.
So
Awesome.
really,
Well, for the second time.
First time, yes. First pre-release in a while. Not first pre-release, yeah.
a great place to play. I was just going to say that's where I go to the Mox.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So then so I guess, the broad answer to, have you stay connected to the game is that we've all still, I mean, certainly this is true for me as well. We never stopped playing it.
Right.
It's just our interactions with it certainly have been different, and losing that paper aspect, even though it didn't necessarily affect Kenji too much, has sucked, I would say. But
it sucked.
yeah,
It did.
we're getting there. Certainly in some places, but in a much bigger way. They announced a couple weeks ago. Now I think it was a couple weeks ago at this point. Maybe it was only last week. Time moves very strangely.
It was a couple weeks
here on the internet. They announced the big changes to the organized play thing under the new leadership of William Jensen, which is wild. And just curious from a perspective of, as you mentioned, someone was grinding on coverage, to someone who is a professional level Magic player, but necessarily doesn't necessarily want to go hitting all the GPs, though they haven't brought those back yet.
Right.
What your both thoughts on the new sort of organized play system is?
Sure. I guess I'll start so I was inducted into the Rivals League in the old system, which means I had done well at a previous Mythic Championship or Mythic Invitational, one of the bigger tournaments, which effectively put me on what used to be known as like the train. I was auto-qualified for all of the big tournaments throughout the year, like the effective Pro Tours throughout the year. So the Grand Prix and whatnot were all secondary, basically. They were optional, which they always were, but I didn't need to like go grind out. And under that model, I don't know, I kind of lost the drive. It didn't seem as rewarding to me. I didn't have something to go and strive for necessarily, especially since I was already in it now. I felt like I was just obligated almost to do these things week in and week out, especially when it was, don't get me wrong, it was a really messy system beforehand. Like, everybody in the Rivals and the Magic Pro League would have to play like every other week with these league systems or whatever, and we would grind out these points that would be on the leaderboard, but we wouldn't really necessarily know how things would change from week to week. It was like you had to look at the overall picture, but each week counted.
And with you in the Rivals League, your goal was to do well enough against the actual MPL that then you would then move up into the Magic Pro League?
Right, yeah, or at least at the very least stay in Rivals League. So you played against all the players. Right. It wasn't just, you didn't play against, specifically Rivals if you were in Rivals, or just other pro leaguers if you're in the Pro League. Yeah, you battled it against them all. And then if you did well enough, and again, that was the accumulation system or whatever, you could be advanced into the Magic Pro League or stay in Rivals at the very least. If not, you would be booted out. So I guess there was some level of, hey, I need to do at least moderately well. But no, it was strange to me. So like, I'm glad the new system is a lot more straightforward. It's kind of like back in the old days where it was very, very clear cut what you needed to do to grind up that system to level up, so to speak. So
yeah, is it something that you'll see yourself maybe participating in more certainly than the last several years worth of sort of strange esports system?
Yeah, no, I like the climb,
because it's like regional, PTQ, nationals. No, what is it now?
No, it's regional championship qualifier.
Okay,
regional championship.
Yeah,
Pro Tour, Worlds.
Right. Sorry,
you said regional PTQ, which is not a thing.
Right. What I meant was, I meant what you said.
Okay.
So yeah, listen
Yeah.
to Marshall.
Regional championship. That's to
It's
me
the regional qualifier. I said PTQ. So the regional
Sorry,
qualifiers
yeah, I get you now.
to
Yep.
qualify for nationals.
For regional championship.
Right, okay. Because it's not.
There's no nationals
It
currently.
used to be nationals, right? But it's like
Similar
ages
enough.
ago.
Yeah, similar enough, but
But like each region,
so regional championship is a new thing.
yeah,
There are corollaries that you could make to older stuff like nationals or maybe the players tour events, somewhat similar. They're regional, meaning that they're usually to a country or a group of countries. There's 11 different regions in the world, so they're pretty granular, but they're a much bigger deal depending on which region you're in.
right.
Particularly the US one, the Europe one, those ones are big.
Yeah.
Like a regional championship here, or not here, we're in Canada now, but in the US has a huge prize pool compared. It has a $30,000 first prize. That's when I first started covering pro tours, they were 40.
Yeah,
So like a regional championship is not like if you win one of those, that is a career achievement. That is much, much more important than having won a Grand Prix, for example, at least at the bigger ones. Like
yeah. We were
that's-
looking at the Canadian regional qualifiers compared to the U.S. ones, and the prize money was a lot lower for the Canadian ones, presumably because there's just less competition.
Well, it's interesting because Canada. So one of the most interesting things, just to kind of jump in too,
Please.
is that there has been a lot of the responsibility for the things that are below the Pro Tour level. So Pro Tour World Championship, regional qualifiers,
Yeah,
handed off.
yeah.
So in the U.S., it's DreamHack. I think Face-to-Face
Face-to-Face is doing
got it for Canada.
Yeah,
And it's interesting because a lot of the questions that got asked on the day that they announced it were about this. Like, hey, what if I do this about my region,
Yeah.
wherever I have, I'm in Europe, I'm in Canada, I'm in US. And the answer was always talk to your tournament organizer.
yeah.
And it's like, but don't you know? You're wizards. Like you get to decide this. And the answer was no. We've handed the keys off. They can run it how they see fit. There's a set of constraints in play about how many,
How many
spots they
invites
can
and
give and stuff.
yeah.
Right. But beyond that, they get to figure it out. And to me, that's a double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
On one hand, if they don't do a very good job, you're kind of at the mercy of a tournament organizer.
Yeah.
But there's a pretty strong incentive for them to do a good job because, there's always going to be wizards kind of going, how you doing over there? Right. And if it's not going well, it's like, well, there's somebody else who would like to run these and we'll hand that over. It's,
Yeah.
I don't know, of course, how the contracts work and stuff, but this general business sense that's how it would work. But the upside to it's really strong. They are very incentivized to try to keep these contracts and try to keep doing these things, and they can do them how they want. And, like what I heard about the one here in Canada is really interesting is that they've split it.
Yeah.
Right. So there's going to be kind of a Western version and an Eastern version of it. So you don't have people flying across the country to do, to qualify or to go play in the bigger events. Instead of having one big regional championship, they've kind of sub-regioned it out too.
Yeah, I think they're doing it in Vancouver and Toronto.
That sounds right. Yeah. And, to me, that's like a really interesting decision that makes a lot of sense geographically and where the population density lies in Canada.
Yeah.
And, maybe if Wizards of the Coast ran it, they wouldn't have that granularity to be able to go all the way down to the level of
It would be in Toronto.
What do actual Canadians want?
It would only be in Toronto.
Right. And that leaves the whole west coast of Canada, where we happen to be right now, on a very long airplane flight to fly over to the regional championship. So they get to run this. And maybe it doesn't work. Maybe they're like, nah, we want to have the big one event and it brings everybody together, and they can change it. Right. And that's really cool. And, there also seem to be putting things around these regional championships as well.
Yeah, it seems
DreamHack,
like
who has the one for the U.S., has announced similar stuff where it feels like a big GP.
Yeah, so it was face-to-face, yeah. And they said they mentioned there was like this one little line in the Wizards announcement that was like, we have no further information on Magic Fests, but we expect them to return.
Yes.
Which was like, I
have
was sort of-
thoughts on that.
Yeah, I was sort of reading that and being like, because you are going to do it?
Yeah.
Or you just sort of assume that will happen naturally? Like,
Yeah.
Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, that's right. And there's a lot of tea leaf reading that you have to do to kind of sort it out because, Wizards, like, they've had a reputation for announcing announcements or for saying doing an announcement that left more questions than answers.
Yep.
Yet they didn't on this one.
No.
Right?
This
It was like,
surprisingly
wow,
robust.
you have thought through a lot of this stuff. Like you had to get really nitpicky before you got them going, like, let me check on that.
Yeah.
Right. Well, what if I qualify in one region and then move to a different one and want to qualify at a different, it's like, okay, we'll sort that out later. But all the other bigger picture stuff, even getting down to the granular stuff at the Pro Tour level, like how you requalify and stuff, they had it. They had those answers. So we know a lot. But when they did those type of things, like about GPs or Magic Fest or whatever you want to call them, there was some like, what do we see here? And I'll tell you what my take on it is. My read is that they aren't interested in running them themselves because they would have, I believe, just wrapped that up in part of this bigger picture if that was something that was really a priority. So that's fine. They don't have to be the ones to run them. In fact, for most of the Grand Prix or Magic Fest that any of us have been to, they haven't ran them. They've handed off the majority of the responsibility to a tournament organizer. But the interesting thing about it is that they would often be subsidized in different ways from Wizards via product, or I don't really know the exact details, but Wizards would be involved with the running of that.
Yeah.
And it feels like they're like not in wanting that anymore.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking to myself, like, okay, there's these big companies, these, the Star City Games, the Channel Fireballs, the face-to-face games and stuff. And like, I don't know how often you can get away with it if it's not subsidized, but come on, you're telling me that if there was a GP Vancouver in 2 months that they wouldn't sell out and have a bunch of people there and doing all this stuff. Channel Fireball did the big event in Vegas. It wasn't technically a GP, but it was GP-like thing in Vegas when we first thought the pandemic was easing a little more than, and it was a huge success. I went, there was tons of people, right? So, those you gotta feel like can be profitable and worth it for these companies to go for. It just is a more independent thing. So the question is, what does Wizards' involvement end up being? And I don't really know how that works. I'm not privy to that, but it's really hard for me to imagine that, given the demand that we've seen for large scale events, open events like this, with all of the things you expect, some type of main event, command zone to play commander in, booths for vendors, panels for you, that kind of stuff, cosplay, all of the things you expect at a Magic Fest or a GP, that market's there. Yeah. Somebody is going to say, I will put up money and rent a space and do the whole thing and try to make money off of it.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine that not happening. The only question for me is frequency, because there was so many of them before that people could be really picky about, like, I don't want to fly quite that far. I'll go to the next one the weekend after. Now the world may look a little more like, hey, they're once every few months and you do have to fly, but if you want to go get that experience, they're going to be out there. Yeah. That's my guess.
I think that's a pretty reasonable guess.
I mean, there was probably some cannibalization too, because there were so many, right? Like you were saying, people choose individual, but if there's like 4 a year, then you're like, okay, I want to.
I'm planning for it ahead of time and all that. Yeah, because I mean, I was thrilled with the lack of GPs might have been the only thing that was kind of like, what about those? But everything else, when I saw it, I was like, they kind of stuck the landing on this thing. Yeah, right. Because with the missteps that have happened. I think people are a little too harsh on Wizards for the esports thing. I do agree that there was a lot of implementation issues and that it didn't really resonate. The stuff that Kenji was saying about, I mean, even the players in the leagues didn't know what their status was, what they needed, how many points they were getting, and what was going to happen next. It was kind of just like you were along for the ride. And at the end of it, they're like, congrats, you're still in Rivals. And you're like, okay, I guess so. I didn't know, but cool. Those were real issues. Yeah. They made it hard to translate to the audience. And that's a big part of my job in the booth, is to take something that's really complicated like Magic and translate it for somebody who's into it, but maybe not as into it as we are. Right. And part of that is translating the tournament structures and what the players are actually playing for. And I couldn't.
This is when you get to the Marshall asks obvious questions criticism, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
Love that. We've talked about that on the podcast.
Yeah,
before.
that's so brutal. Because I just have to just be like, okay, you don't get it. But, you know, but every once in a while somebody will be like, hey, dummy, he knows the answer. He's asking so that, and I'm just like, you get it, man. That's my guy. But yeah. But this thing that they announced was just like, I mean, I was able to explain it on here by going ding, 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 ding. It's a pyramid.
They showed that pyramid graphic and I was like, there's only 4 steps.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it starts with the store around the corner and the last one's the world championship. I can do that, you know? And I remember when I very first started playing and I started playing at a local game store. This is actually where I met Kenji too. And, you know, I had started playing. I wasn't aware of tournaments that were going on. And there was a time when regionals was coming up. And this tournament doesn't exist anymore, but it might come back. Who knows? But it was a tournament that you would go play and you could top 8 and then make it to nationals. And somebody at the shop was like, are you going to play in regionals? And I was like, I don't know what that is. And they're like, oh, it's a tournament next week. Top 8 gets to go to nationals. Okay, what do I do? They're like, just bring a deck, blah, blah. I'm like, sweet. Incidentally, I got 9th.
Oh.
With a deck that I made, but I didn't understand like that what a heartbreaker that was.
Oh.
And when I looked at the final standings, I was like, oh, I got 9th. And the guy next to me was like, oh man, he's like, I'm so sorry, dude. And I was like, the hell, that's like top 10, dude. Like, what are you talking? And I walked out of there just happy as a clam, not realizing how close I got to qualifying. But anyway, and then you go to nationals, and if you do really well there, you can qualify for worlds.
Right.
That's what the person told me. I'm like, okay. Right. Like,
cool.
That's it. You know? And then it was like, somebody was like, hey, you going to go to the PTQ next week? What's that? Oh, you go to a tournament down in Seattle. If you win, you get to go play at the Pro Tour. Cool. I'm in.
Cool.
That was it. That was the explanation that I needed. Like that was that.
Just
and
so
now
straightforward, you know? It's like you do this thing and there you go.
Right. And now we're back to it. Right.
Good.
And to me, the really important aspect of this, it's funny because having it be explainable in that way is important. But what's really important, really, really, really important, and what I think that they brought back that I think that they lost for a while, was the idea that there is something bigger out in the world for Magic than whatever's happening in front of me. When I first came back to the game and started playing, I was like early 30s, right? Like I was an adult. I wasn't like, you know, just like I had a job and whatever. I started playing again and I got hooked on it and I was really interested. But the reason that I kept playing was because there was a PTQ, there was regionals, there was nationals, there was worlds, there was a Pro Tour out there somewhere.
There was a kid at the store you couldn't beat.
And there was also a kid at the store that I could never beat. And then he would just go back to college. And I'm like, who the hell was that kid? Oh, that's Kenji. I'm like, who is this guy? And then he would show up again and just smash everybody. I'll never forget that. I'm just like, what is with this kid? He's so good, you know, because at some point I thought I was a better player, you know, like kind of worked my way up at the store. And I'm like, okay, I feel like I got this place pretty clocked now. Like I'm going to be, and he would come in and just slap me around for a week and a half on winter break and then just go back to college. And I'm just like left in tears going, and he's playing super fast and he knows all the, I'm just like, yeah, he's still really good. But anyway, that aspirational note for me was huge when it comes to the PT. The funny part about it is I never prioritized making it a goal to make it to the Pro Tour.
Yeah.
I did play PTQs and stuff. I wanted to, but I never was like, I'm all in, I'm going to be a pro Magic player. I was always like, well, they don't really make quite enough. And like, I have a good job. I'm not really going to go chase that dream.
Right.
That didn't matter. It's that it was out there, justified that me as an adult who could choose to do different things with his time said, no, there's something important and big here and it's worth pursuing. And I think that they have that back because that went away.
Yeah.
Right. Like I could never in good faith talk to, let's say a mutual friend of Kenji and I starts playing Magic and okay, well, what's this all about? What's going on? In the system now, I can be like, hey, you should go play in an RCQ, right? You should go play in one of these things. Like you might be able to qualify and go to regional championship. It'd be really cool. You'll get to travel out and see it be a thing. But if 6 months ago that person came to me and asked, I'm not like, yeah, you could make it to Rivals League. I'm like, there's no way you're going to make it to Rivals League. And I can't even tell you how to do it.
Yeah, I truly don't actually know how that worked.
I don't either. You know, there was no clear tracks
For a time
to
you were
make
doing
it.
a weekly show about it.
I sure was.
Yeah.
Yep. And I was covering it. And I mean, I brought it up. I said, I don't really know. They're like, yeah, well, just try to understand what the person's implications are up front. But the truth is that a lot of times those couldn't be figured out until after the tournament. So I just didn't use those as narratives.
Right.
Which those are narratives I use a lot.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
it's
what is
good
this player
for
playing
viewers
for?
to be like, yeah,
Right.
you know, it's like
So-
if this person wins, then they can, you know, like if this person's in round whatever at this regional championship, and so if they win this, then, you know, they might not win the championship, but then they're going to be guaranteed a slot at the Pro Tour.
They're playing for gold or platinum, as
Yeah.
we used to call it. That
You
was
know.
a big storyline. And yeah, not being able to answer that in a reasonable way just made it go away. You know, I look back at the esports era, as we'll call it, for Magic, and it was a failure. There's no other way to put it. But I have to say, I'm not as hard on Wizards as some people are, and the reason
No.
is because I think that them putting their chips on the table was commendable.
Yeah.
They said, okay, we've got a really good product with Arena. Esports is popping off. Now's the time to push all in. Let's put our chips on the table and give this a shot. And I'll tell you, I would have been more disappointed if they never did that than if they did what they did, which is they put their chips on the table, but then they kind of took them off, and then they used some different chips, and then they were like throwing the chips in the round, and eventually they're just
Exactly.
eating them.
Yep.
You know, and so it didn't go
My
well.
chips.
And that part is disappointing, but I mean, it was a big undertaking. It was really difficult. But like I said, when I look back, I'm grateful that they decided at least to take their shot.
Yeah.
I think it would have been worse to not do so. That being said, I'm grateful that they're back to kind of their roots, because I think that this is the more natural balance for where
Yep.
Magic would sit.
And I think there's stuff they learned. Someone asked us in a Q&A a couple weeks ago, they're like, is there stuff that Wizards sort of took on board during the esports era that you'd like to see them retain in this new thing? And for me, the staging, like the
Those were incredible.
yeah, like literally the physical stages,
Yes.
the tables, the desks, the lighting, the pyro at the end when there's the champion, instead of like the two folding chairs on either side of a square table on like some stone pattern linoleum that's rolled out in the corner of an
Yeah.
arena with like a banner around the
They
back
blew
of
it out. I've actually,
Marshall calling in each individual competitor, and they're just lining up in a row.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a funny story, by the way, about those stages.
Oh, yeah?
It's not long, but you have a child.
Yeah.
I do not.
Mm-hmm.
It really showed. So we were in Hawaii, and they had for World Championship, and they had that full stage. Like they blew confetti out the top. This is
Yeah.
one Paulo won.
This was the Mythic Invitational. Like this was one.
This
of
is World Championship.
This
Okay.
is, yeah.
Yeah, the one that Paulo won.
okay.
And one of the things that they have are these spark machines.
Right.
They shoot sparks up into the air.
Yeah.
But these ones are really cool. They're high tech and they're cold.
I've seen these.
Yes.
Yeah, these visual effects ones that they do like titanium sparks or something. So
They
you can-
burn
you
little tiny pieces of metal, but they're already cold.
Can, yeah, you can put your hand on it. And it
You
doesn't
sure
even-
can. And so I did that. I was like, this is cool,
no.
right? So I'm like, this is neat. So the tournament ends, and they're doing some tests. It was like the end of the day, and they're doing some tests. And we had come out into the main area, the seating area. And as it turns out, there was a youth group or a community organization or something that had organized a field trip for like 20 kids to come out and to see the event. And they got to come
Cool.
backstage and go through, and this is how they do the cameras. And you know, so it was really cool. Some of them
Meet
played
Marshall
Magic.
Sutcliffe.
I signed a couple of their playmats. They were really nice kids. They were probably, you know, maybe 8 to 12 range, something like that. And so I'm talking to them and whatever. And this little girl comes up. She's probably 8 or 9 or whatever. And she's like, she asks some question about the screen or whatever. And then they do the sparkler thing, you know. And she's like, oh, those are really cool. I'm like, yeah, they're really cool. You can put your hand through them. They're not hot or anything. And she's like, really? And the teacher's like, no, we don't need kids running their hands through fire or sparks or whatever. And I'm like, oh, how do I back off of this? Because now she's like, she wants to go up there and just put her hand in the sparks, you know, and hopefully not the family fireplace or
Oh,
whatever.
man.
So I had to kind of gently back off on the you
Literally,
should never do
yeah.
this, but technically you can kid
Diffuse
thing.
it.
Yeah.
When I was like super young, this is even remotely related to magic. When I was super young, we had a babysitter who showed us that like if you move your finger quickly enough, you can put it right through the flame of the candle.
Oh boy.
Right? Neat trick, which I'm sure was great until I told my parents about it later, and then we never saw that babysitter again.
Babysitter. Yeah, so I got a little bit to learn on that one. But overall with the OP stuff, I was really, it's funny, it's kind of the theme here. I felt relieved.
Yeah.
It was, I was happy, but I also felt like, okay, we can get back to kind of where magic actually fits. Because I've always kind of viewed magic as like, some of the big esports like League of Legends or whatever, those are kind of for the North American sports, kind of the NFL or the NBA, right? The really big audience, and then you've got other games that get really good audiences that are kind of the, like the hockey or the baseball or whatever. And I've always viewed magic as kind of the golf. We're the tennis, we're popular. People know, like enough people watch that it's a real thing, but it's not necessarily the thing that everybody's doing on that Sunday.
I think golf works well because it's, it's not high intensity.
Right. It's a little more laid back, when we were doing the GP coverage and stuff, those type of events were a lot more like hang out with us for the day. Like you want to go to the store, you want to go grab a burger, come back. We'll be here. Like we'll just be talking about the tournament. If you watch a football game or a hockey game, like you got to watch it. Like you're not going to like, I'm going to go to the store in the middle of the second period or whatever, and then I'll catch up later. It's like, no, you're watching, you care. This is a lot more like golf where, oh, hey, how's, Brooks, whatever doing? He's still at -4. Right. And you can kind of come and go, and if you tried to take golf and make it into the Super Bowl, it would miss. Yeah. You would be like, this is pretty cool that you did all this extra stuff. I can see what you were going for, but it's just not where it fits in its space. And I think that we're back to something we can be proud of. Like golf, that's not an insult. No. Right? Not everything has to be the number one thing in its thing. We're different, right? We cater to the audience that we have, and I think it's where it should be again.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm very much looking forward to it. I also very pleased to see that they included in that announcement as well that there will also be coverage, at least for all the Pro Tours
and the World Championship
and the Worlds, obviously. Yeah. But I'm hopeful also that there will be, at least for the regionals. I would like to see coverage for the regionals, but I suppose that's more up to the regional organizers.
So I talked to Wizards. They had a meeting with us coverage folks to kind of break down the system before it went out and to answer questions. And of course, that was one of the questions. And they said that's up to the regional tournament organizer. Yeah. So they're going to kind of let them. The vibe I got was that they're going to say, you know what, go do what you want to do, and we'll talk in 6 months or a year.
I mean, at least in the U.S., with DreamHack being we've said this on the podcast before as well. DreamHack, their whole thing is broadcasting tournaments.
I have to assume they're going
to. So
sure.
I would be surprised if they didn't. They at least very much have the capability to.
I think they've been reaching out online as well. They made their own like Twitter account and whatnot and started reaching out to people.
Okay,
and,
good.
Who do we need to talk to?
We haven't officially done anything except for name drop on this podcast, so I doubt it's made it to them. But if Face to Face wants a hand with broadcasting live magic in Canada, contact us.
You definitely should. They know what they're doing. I've worked with them before, and very, very good. Yeah. But we'll see. Yeah. So it's been a big change for me though, overall, because, I mean, that's the equivalent, of them saying, okay, you've got 4 events for the year. Mm-hmm. There might be 3 more. Mm-hmm. So, from my perspective, I've had to kind of branch out and focus on, just career-wise, I have to put my energy somewhere. Yeah. And so coverage can't be such a big pillar that it was before for me anymore. Yeah. Now I have to figure out what to say while people shuffle cards because I haven't had to do that for a long time.
Oh, right.
Like crack a fetch. I'm like, oh my God, what do I do for this?
Quick, find the narrative.
Also, I've gotten a lot lazier about memorizing card names because they're just on the screen in front of me.
Oh, no.
And now I have to not only memorize them, but somebody's going to play some like third alternate art foil collector's booster version of some common. And I'm going to be, what is that?
You've missed a couple tongue twister ones in the past little while.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
Dodge that bullet.
whoever named River Wheel Aerialists is still out there in the creative text team causing chaos.
That's the number one. That's the GOAT. When I read that, I was like, you have got to be kidding me. Like, we're going to have to sit here and practice that. Do you know that?
We've told the story before that we called it as being terrible to say out loud on the podcast.
You did.
You listened to the podcast.
Yes.
And were ready for it. And everyone else on coverage at that weekend's event screwed it up.
Totally true. It's 100% true. I was like, they are so right. And it's weird because when you read it in your head, you're like, yeah, okay, it's just another magic card. But when you say it, you're like, really? Like, how do I make my mouth do that?
I want them to start doing like the statistics that baseball. I mean, baseball games are slow. Right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Christ,
they have
yes.
man, the number crunchers there. They have every little stat analyzed.
yeah.
Like if you could do that for Magic, I want to see like how many games this person's played, how many matches they've won. That
Totally.
Type of, yeah. And I know they do that for like they used to do that for some pro tours and whatnot. But
they will go deep dive it on smaller field events.
I want to see the tail of the tape.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want to see
that'd be
the
cool.
full rundown.
Yeah, no, I want to see like heavy stats and just be like, okay, they've won 63.2% of their games when they're on the draw with this deck.
Yeah, that suits the culture too, right?
Yeah.
Like we all like to.
Oh, that's
go
what I'm saying.
nitty-gritty.
Yeah.
I like that.
Oh yeah, definitely. No, that'd be great. I had something else, and now it's escaped my head completely. But that's only because we've been filming like a bajillion different pieces of content over the past couple days. Was it about I guess it was about the pro coverage. Oh, right. One last thing then, Kenji, because you were talking about the sort of the not really understanding the process of like now you're on the train or the Rivals League or whatever. So I thought they were pretty clear about how the train, I suppose, is going with the new system, and they even talked about how for the first season it's more generous, so we can seed it, so we can like get people on board.
Yeah,
sort
they're
of thing.
casting a wider net.
Yeah. How did that all look to you? Does that seem like something you might want to try and do, considering it's less like every other week GP grinding?
I mean, I'm very fortunate that if you were in the Rivals or MPL, you are already kind of placed.
Oh, so you're already in.
No, well, not the Pro Tour.
Right.
I make it to the regional championships, I believe. I don't.
You do.
Yeah, I don't have to. I think it's 2 of them or something. Yeah, I don't have to play the qualifier. I can immediately go to the championships with DreamHack Atlanta. Is that what it is?
Yep.
Yeah. So I'll be able to play in that one or whatever. And then, do I also get one Pro Tour? No.
I don't think so.
Okay, so it's just the regional championships. So
that's how I understand it.
right. So there is already a little bit of boost for people that were in the Rivals and MPL.
Good.
Yeah, so they can kind of continue where they were on the Pro League scene or whatever. But no, I'm excited to grind. I want to play in the qualifiers and stuff, and I want to be able to.
He's going to be a menace at the local store.
Yeah,
it's just not fair.
What's nice is I love that they made this point that it's like there's some number of invites per event that roll down if people who qualify again some other way.
Yes, they get
like
those are for the Pro Tour specifically, though, right?
Yes.
That's right. Yeah, and those are also a little bit more generous the first time around, I believe.
They are.
Right. Yeah, so you can accumulate points, and if you do well enough in 3 pro or 2 of 3 Pro Tours or something, you can qualify for like the 4th.
You can actually qualify for 2.
For 2, okay.
Yeah, so the way it works is they're called adjusted match points.
Right.
And basically, if you hit a certain threshold, it qualifies you for the next one. But if you hit a certain threshold out of 3, you'll naturally hit the next one, and then it'll requalify you for another one after, so you can get 2 at once within that time frame.
Right.
That's the equivalent of what we would call being on the train now.
Yeah.
The difference, though, of course, is that there's no money.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of interesting how the announcement went down because Pro Magic died that day.
Right.
And nobody talked about it. It was like, I think everybody kind of anticipated it.
Right, because it used to be that they'd fly everybody in.
Not only that, they'd pay you.
They'd pay.
You get an
fees.
appearance fee.
Cool.
Yeah, you go to a pro tour, you get like $1,200 or $1,500 per. You get flown in hotel, and then there was other money that you could get. And then when they went to this thing, they just had a straight up salary.
Right.
And then you got free rolled into the tournament, so you could win money there too. But now there's no salary. There's no flights. But two things that pop up to mind with that. One of them is that they have widened out the prize pools on a lot of these bigger tournaments.
Yeah.
So even though it's not explicit that you're actually getting a flight for free or subsidized flight, if it pays down to last place, that I think is kind of you're going to get $450 for showing up. Hopefully that covers most of your travel.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, which I think is cool. The other thing that we didn't mention yet, limited.
Yeah.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah. So the Pro Tours are going back to the old format where they are going to be 3 rounds of limited to kick off Friday, followed by five rounds of constructed, repeat that. And then Sunday, the top 8 was going to be constructed.
Yeah.
And then
we're all big fans of limited here.
Yeah. Understated. But yeah, and then the regional championships, it's a little bit unclear. It looks like those are going to be constructed, at least to start. But the regional championship qualifier, so the events that everybody's going to be playing locally, those can be limited up to the discretion of the tournament organizers and the WPN stores that run them.
Yeah.
But every time that they've had a chance to do those, they have, because they tend to get better attendance numbers because you don't need to invest in some deck to
Anybody
show up.
can show up.
Yeah. And just in case you didn't watch the previous episode where we talked about this, I mentioned only because we haven't, is that you can also qualify to get to the Pro Tour from playing Magic Online or from playing Magic Arena. Like you can also qualify purely digitally. You will eventually have to play paper Magic if you make it to the Pro Tour.
Yes.
But I love that it's like, no, you can qualify from all these places. So that's good.
That's really good. Yeah. So it really does seem like a robust system. The only thing missing are open level GPs.
Yeah.
That's the only piece of the puzzle that we don't really know about. But we've got word from DreamHack, from Face to Face, and from, I think it's called Legacy, the one that's in Europe, that they're all having, I don't know how mini convention style things around these, like what we would have called a Magic Fest or a GP.
Yeah, there's going to be side events. You can play Commander. It's going to be,
Exactly.
There's vendors and cosplayers and artists, and it's going to be a whole deal.
Right. It's not just a bunch of people getting together to play a regional championship and then going home. It's going to be a celebration.
So that's exciting.
Right. And then the question is, what can the market bear for open events that aren't those?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's, as we talked about before, it's guaranteed that it can bear something.
Yeah.
It's not zero.
Yeah.
Like if nobody else does it, like you guys want to, I mean, like
we've thought about
we could combine for, I mean, like, if everybody's like, nah, I'm good. Like I'll do it.
We and unnamed parties have previously talked about quite seriously about doing something like that.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I think it would go well.
Yeah. That was obviously in the before times.
Yeah.
So, but we'll see how things shake out. I think that was a great chat. It was nice to hear sort of your thoughts on it as well.
We're no longer esports. That's all. I'm sad.
Oh yeah, right. We're not esports anymore.
We're play live MTG or something.
Yeah, play Magic or something.
Yeah, that was
they
the final
changed the
nail.
Twitter account.
Did they?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, I didn't know they actually changed the. Is it still like magic.gg though, or
Yes.
whatever?
Oh, the website.
The
sure.
website's
Okay,
the same,
all right.
but the Twitter is at, I think it's
Play.
Magic.
Yeah,
or
it's like Play MTG or something.
Yeah, something
And
like that.
Their very last tweet was like, "This is no longer going to be a usable account. We are now defunct and moving to this."
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow. We not
Rip.
esports. All right. Well, fair enough. So we will then begin the housekeeping of wrapping up an episode of Tap Tap, which is going to take a little longer than normal because I want to give each of you a chance to tell the fine people at home where they can follow your own content,
Sure.
Magic or not. So Kenji, what are you up to?
I record a daily YouTube video over at youtube.com/NumotTheNummy. You can just search for Numot the Nummy, which is NUMOTTHENUMMY. Say that 5 times. It's no river wheel aerialist.
Yes.
Okay.
Did you hear the pause in there?
Yep.
by the way?
I didn't have time to practice. Also stream live on Twitch every weekday and then often on weekends. Twitch.tv/NumotTheNummy as well.
I told you he's a machine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about doing those draft videos too, by the way,
should.
on YouTube.
So this is funny.
He tried to talk me into it, and he might have.
You should. Before I let you go, this is funny because I'm amazed I was able to stay conscious during the podcast because these are the voices that play as we fall asleep at night. Because my mind goes a mile a minute when I'm trying to fall asleep, and I cannot fall asleep without some sort of distraction. Kathleen's very similar. So what Kathleen does is puts on the latest episode of Limited Resources with a timer on her podcast app and puts the phone under her pillow. I can't do podcasts because then
you'll pay attention.
I pay attention.
Yeah. I'm like that with music.
I watch Kenji's latest draft video on my phone sideways, right? So that because I'm lying on my side watching the draft video, and then I'm just like really keyed in on what he's doing in the thing until I eventually nod off. This is not a criticism of this. People have told us they fall asleep listening to our stuff. This is not a criticism of the content, but I just think it's very funny that it's like on most nights, both of these people are talking in our bedroom.
It's just us four in bed, you know?
Kathleen and I are trying to fall asleep.
Can you move over? And like the cat's up here now.
You mentioned I'm a good kisser. It wasn't for no reason, so.
Yeah.
Where can people find your fine voice, Marshall?
So the main stuff I'm doing now is Limited Resources.
Yep.
So that's lrcast.com. That's podcasts about Limited that I do with Luis Scott Vargas every week. And then Wristwatch Revival which
is also not easy to say out loud quickly.
I did not realize that until after. I'm like, wow, that was really dumb.
Yeah.
The name sounded so cool until I actually did the first video. But anyway, and that's completely unrelated to Magic, but it's a YouTube channel where I buy and restore vintage wristwatches. So I know that sounds like it might not be up your alley, but
it's fascinating.
It is.
If you like kind of chill content, I call it second monitor content.
Slow TV.
Yeah.
Also, yeah.
Yeah. You know, where the vibe I have for it is you can just kind of set your world aside, right? Just anything that's going on, just get rid of that. Just come hang out with me on my bench. We're going to go on this little journey where we try to fix something that's broken and hopefully get it running at the end. And that's it. And that's on YouTube. Yeah.
Did Beach tell you this, that he didn't know it was you when he started watching?
No.
he didn't know it was you. Started watching
that's
Wristwatch Revival, and then saw that you had the playmat with it's like I think it's Apocalypse Hydra.
It is Apocalypse Hydra.
Yes, with the little Magic the Gathering symbol, and he's like, oh. I wonder. This person plays Magic. Interesting. And then went to the about page or something, and was like, Marshall. Why does that sound? Oh, and then realized who it was.
Yeah,
I use really
that's a mouse pad that I always include in the frame as a little shout out to my Magic friends out there. You know, just like it has no business being in there really. I could just move it out of the way, but I always have left it in just to, fly the flag.
Yeah, it is that guy.
Yeah.
All right.
His channel's like the History Channel before it got all alien-y,
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the good old school History Channel. You know the
Wait
one?
till you see my next video.
So until next time, a reminder that Tap Tap Concede is brought to you, of course, by Card Kingdom, the wonderful people at Card Kingdom, a kingdom of cards, as they repeatedly ask us not to say. If you go to cardkingdom.com/LRR, that puts our promo code on there, which all that does is tell them that we've sent you, which helps us out. And we do that because, we think they're great. And they'll ship you your cards real fast. Get yourself some Streets of New Capenna. And of course, this show and everything we do is brought to you by you and your kind support of our Patreon at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. So until next time, I've been Graham, joined by Kenji.
Hi.
And Marshall.
Bye-bye.
Paul's been on tech. Heather gets these online. Thank you all so much for listening. And we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.